Promise, I don't know what kind of tone it's supposed to be. Like, I know I want it to be like pretty silly, and then I don't know like what situation. Like, you can't just recycle the original ones because that's like boring.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't do that in America.
Hello, everybody. Multiple minutes later, but Master Chief decided he didn't want to connect to the internet, so we had to bring out the giant yellow cord that now stretches across the lab. But we're doing it now. Jan, can you hear us at home? If you're speaking, can't really hear you. Are you speaking? No? Are you not speaking? Why no?
I can if you want me to, but I was just typing in chat that yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Just need to test the microphone. Thank you. You can continue chatting. Okay. So, about 2 weeks ago, Jen did a case study about a really good game with really good dialogue called Hades. I'm going to do a case study about a game that kind of had good dialogue and then shot itself in the foot 50 times right at the end. That's called Little Hope. Yeah. So, a little bit of context for this. The studio Supermassive Games is responsible for quite a lot of very good narrative-driven games, most notably Until Dawn. It kind of blurred the boundaries between a movie and a game by being super cinematic, very high definition, and had a lot of really interesting choices throughout the game that was very murdery. Not to be confused with Supergiant Games, who made Hades. Supergiant is great. Supermassive, I forget what that game on the right is, but it did not get very received well, despite having pretty good graphics. That does not sell a game. So, after the success of the very story-like cinematic Until Dawn, they decided they wanted to make an entire series out of this. And that series became known as the... Well, there goes for the climatic. The Dark Anthology series. Now, there are a total of 3 release games in this, 4 if you include the one that's going to be released sometime this year called The Devil in Me, which is based on the actual serial killer H.H. Holmes. But we don't talk about that one because it hasn't been released yet, so I don't know if it's good or bad yet. So, there's 3 games in the Dark Anthology series. All 4 of these make up Season 1 of the entire series, but we're not going to talk about season-based releases yet. So, the first one, Man of Medan, which is about the folk legend of the O-Ring Medan, a ship that got lost at sea, and no one ever found the wreckage. Little Hope, this one's just kind of like a folktale about... Well, I'll get to that in a minute. And then House of Ashes... It's hard to describe House of Ashes, because it kind of is alien, and vampires, and also Indiana Jones, and also, like, the Gulf War. It tries being a lot of things, but it kind of... Here, let's talk about it for a sec. So, Man of Medan, the first one in the Dark Anthology series, got received... It was just kind of okay. The story was just kind of flat. None of the characters were really likable. There was not a lot of synergy between really anyone. The scares were alright. This one became known as fail one quick time, you die. Literally. There is one quick time at the very end of the game where if you mess it up, your character dies, no matter how many you saved before. People didn't really like this one. Little Hope, okay. Learn from the mistakes of Man of Medan and try to make a better game. Got received about as well. I'm gonna talk about it. Okay. Third one kind of also fell flat. What about House of Ashes? House of Ashes actually got, like, okay reviews. Somehow, the third one in the series actually started picking up. And then, Devil in Me, we don't know about that one yet. But I am here to talk about this dude, Little Hope. I'm going to elaborate on the story of Little Hope as much as I remember it, and explain why it went so terribly wrong. It comes down to one thing. Y'all have seen the pyramid of writing, the triangle. You have your rising action, your introduction, your rising action, your climax, and then falling action, right? Little Hope has a lot of rising action, as many horror games and thematic things do, and then instead of hitting the climax and then resolving everything, turns into a fucking train wreck very quickly. So, I'm just gonna go through the story, and you'll see why I disregard this game as being one of the worst written things ever. So, you start off with the sequence around the 1960s. You play as this dude named Anthony, and you're just in a house. And you're kind of just, it's the winter time, people are coming home for Christmas, he has siblings. And then the entire thing gets set on fire because his little sister, I forget her name, Emily, I think, she accidentally leaves her doll, her like little wooden doll next to a burner, and the entire thing gets set on fire. No matter what you do, they all die in really horrific ways. This girl up in the upper right, she can die in one of two ways. She can either burn to death or try to jump down from the balcony, but her scarf gets caught on one of the spikes on the railing, and she gets hanged. That's fun. His dad gets crushed by rocks. His mom suffocates from the smoke. And what happened to his... Oh, his brother also tries to jump down from the roof, but he gets impaled on one of the spikes instead of getting hanged. He survives, though, that we know of. So yeah. Now let's talk about the present. So in the present, there's a bus driver taking a group of college students and professors on a field trip from some museum. They get stuck in the middle of the road. There's a detour. They don't really say what the detour is. The bus driver gets spooked by a little girl in the middle of the road, crashes the bus. Conflict. Introduction. Now, we got our characters. Oh, wow, it looks like the people from the 1960s. Coincidence? You would think so. You would think so. Yeah, they look just like the people from the 1960s. So, you go into the nearby town. It's called Little Hope. Roll credits, right? So you talk to the people in town. Really, there's just this one dude on the far right. He's just kind of weird to y'all. He's like... weird. They explore around. It's very creepy, very thematic. It's pretty much just walking simulator until dawn type gameplay. Creepy little girl who looks a lot like the girl that was in the middle of the road and also your little sister from the 1960s. Coincidence? You would think so. God, I wish so. Oh, look. That little girl transports you back to the 1860s, where there's also a family of 5 that looks just like you. Coincidence? You would think so. Now, yeah. 3 different timelines, 3 different eras, all the same 5 people. There's something going on here, and it's doing it very well about connecting everything from the past. Essentially, that little girl, she's crying wolf about all the other family members and accusing them of being witches, even though she's the most witchy out of all of them. No one believes the people that she's accusing because she's a little girl. Why would she accuse people of being witches? And they all get persecuted. And it's mainly by this one dude, Pastor Rick? I think his name's Pastor Rick. He's pretty much, like, using the little girl as a scapegoat to commit all these witch hunts and burn people at the stake because he's just into that. And it's really creepy. He's pretty much just using her as a puppet. Now, remember how I said that they all died in really horrific ways? So, throughout the events of the game, as you're exploring Little Hope, trying to figure out where your bus driver is to, flip the bus and get them out of here, and also being transported to the past every so often to the little girl's 1860s timeline to see people from the past die in really horrific ways. You're also being chased by these demons, and when you know it, they correspond to the people who died. So this one, in the upper left, she died by drowning. Iron chains around her, drowned at the bottom of the lake. That is how the mom died in the 1860s, and in the 1960s, the mom died from suffocation. So that one, the suffocation drowning ghost, only will target the mom. Then there's 2 different ones for the sister, either burned to death or got suffocated. This one has a really creepy long tongue that she'll try to use to suffocate you. This one's really creepy, the dad one. all of its bones are broken, so it just can contort itself in really horrific ways. I would show some footage of that, but it is kind of creepy, and I don't want to disturb anyone. But this one will try to impale you with an iron stake. It's really cool looking. So you go through the events of the game. All the people from the past die. Those correspond to the deaths from the 1960s in some way. And then the demons start showing up to try to kill the people in the present, about 2020 or so. This all corresponds to the very end of the game, where you, as the player character of Andrew, who doesn't die in the past necessarily, you're the final one to be put to the stake, but you can either choose to persecute the little girl and say, hey, she's the one that's causing all this, or say, hey, she had good intentions, but let's not burn her at the stake. So you can either choose to save her or let her burn at the stake from being a witch. And instead, he's the pastor, who turns out actually does have a lot of demonic writings. So, given all that I've said so far very quickly about corresponding to the past, from the 1860s to the 1960s, all having the same deaths, all having the same characters that look extremely alike, all corresponding to this timeline of this little girl accusing other people of being witches despite being a witch herself, even though the pastor is really the witch here. What do you think is going to happen for the ending, as we're drawing to the climax of choosing whether or not to accuse the girl of being a witch and burning her at the stake? What do you think is the ending?
She dies no matter what.
She dies no matter what. Any other theories?
I've seen the game, so I know.
Yeah? Jen, do you have any ideas? Okay, for a moment to type. I've seen this rant before, so I shouldn't say anything. Well, if you hadn't seen this rant before, what would be your guess? Using your narrative brain and your elementary logic of connecting sequences. So, it's kind of sort of clear where this is all going, right? Right? Well, you thought wrong. So, you remember the bus driver at the very beginning, crashes the bus, and then when the others get out of the wreck, they can't find the bus driver anywhere. What happened? So, the bus driver that they were looking for this entire game. The bus driver, Anthony from the 1960s, Andrew from the present, those are all the same fucking guy. Literally, you just play as the bus driver the entire time. All the events in the game, hallucinations, trauma-induced hallucinations. None of it was real. The reason why all the townsfolk were acting weird to you were just talking to yourself because no one else was with you. You were just an old bus driver walking around the city. All the hallucinations of demons and the flashbacks back to the 1860s, nope. Not real. None of it was real. So, can anyone allude to why that isn't a good idea to just ramshake everything at the end to just make it all a dream, a hallucination?
Because there's too much build-up.
Too much build-up for something that would make logical sense given what the game has shown us so far. Anything else? Feels cheap. Oh yeah, it feels cheap.
I mean, it kind of ruins the whole supernatural aspect of it by making it
Totally ruins the whole supernatural aspect, the connecting to the past aspect. For mental illness? Question mark? PTSD? Question mark? So, what they were trying to do was the old pull the rug out from under you. Now, there are some cases where this is done expertly. Some of the most notable is Sixth Sense, where the guy was dead all along, and it actually makes sense given the events that occur in Sixth Sense and how other people react to Bruce Willis And another instance of Ender's Game, where all the simulations and training modes that they went through were actual real ships in real life actually committing battles in an intergalactic war, and they actually won the war. These do it very well because it makes sense. A lot of what happens during the events of the movie or the game actually build up to something that could happen. Yes.
I think another good example is like Beautiful Mind. That one is like peak, like I guess mental health like issue.
Yeah, Beautiful Mind is a really good example. That's the one about the famous mathematician that develops schizophrenia, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have not seen it, but I have heard of it, and I've heard that it's very good and does this kind of thing very well. Because it makes sense based on what we're already given. It does not make sense given that we have a whole buildup of interweaving paths, reincarnation, the supernatural coming back to haunt you, all based on the Salem witch trials, right? That would make sense. It does not make sense for this bus driver character that has really just been like a very loose goal for the characters all along, when there's really something else that they need to work through instead, that he suddenly comes back and is now integral to the rest of the gameplay and the story. Like, and not only that, there's no real good ending to this game. You either shoot yourself in the head, you get scared by the little girl at the very last second and shoot yourself in the head. You don't shoot yourself in the head and you reconcile with the little girl, but everyone else is dead. You make it out of the town, you save the little girl, you don't persecute her, but you get arrested because you shot a gun at the one person who lives in Little Hope, and he called the cops on you, and now you're getting arrested. Or you do the best possible ending where everyone's alive, quote unquote, at the end. You don't shoot the gun at the guy. You go to a diner, and you reconcile with your family. And now you're just a lonely bus driver in the middle of a diner parking lot. And that's where the game ends. There's no satisfying conclusion by pulling the rug out from under you like that. So, let's take a very brief detour into the third game, House of Ashes. Now, as I said earlier, this one actually got some pretty good reviews. What was it about this one that actually made it kind of good? And I've seen like the story and gameplay of this one. It's actually kind of good, but in a really weird way. So, House of Ashes, it's all based about, it starts off in about, I think it was 300 BC in like the Akkadian period of Egypt. It's about two dudes who are fighting over how to go about executing prisoners, or if we should actually save them, etc. And about this Akkadian king who's relenting about this curse that's been put about him for invading a local village. And then suddenly a swarm of bats comes in, kills everyone, right? In there. Go to about, I think it's 2002 when this happens. It's the Gulf War. A bunch of people are just in the Gulf War fighting off like Syrian refugees and blah, blah, blah. And suddenly they all fell down into a pit. Oh, wow. It's actually the ancient Akkadian civilization that has been buried under the sand because of this Sumerian curse, right? So, okay. We're going off of the Egyptian supernatural. That makes sense, right? So, remember those bats I just mentioned? They're not bats. They are actually horrific human-sized vampires. And they can turn you into a weird vampire thing. Okay. Interesting. A departure from traditional, you know, like Egyptian lore and like the everything, you know, pantheon. But it can work. It can work. You know, you get a little creative with how you do it. Well, where did these vampires come from? Any guesses where the vampires came from? Space. Well, you're actually right. Not only from space, but pretty much an exact ripoff of the movie Alien starring Sigourney Weaver. They even have a shot showing, and I couldn't find it, of the giant green pulsating egg, like from the 1980s movie Alien. Yeah. So we now have vampires from space. in Egypt, invading an Egyptian Akkadian civilization from over 2,000 years ago. Okay. Did I mention that during all of this, the main character is Sharpay Evans?
Yeah.
They literally have Ashley Tisdale as the main character of this
I think they did
in a
it
game
well.
of space alien vampires in Egypt. What? I think what House of Ashes does the best is it relishes in just how absurd everything is. You've got Sharpay Evans fighting off space alien vampires with machine guns in the Gulf War. You just kind of accept it. It's very much a suspension of disbelief sort of thing. It's not really trying to be realistic in any sort of sense. Or like just mildly supernatural, like how Men of Medan or Little Hope was. It just kind of goes way into left field, so much that it gets a home run. Sometimes you can just embrace how weird and wacky your ideas are and make it an entire game that actually kind of is fluid. So maybe the fourth game, Devil in Me, is actually going to go on that. It's based off an actual serial killer and his murder hotel. So I don't know how they can make that even more weird. Maybe they have like, I don't know, doppelgangers? I have no idea. Like satanic rituals? I don't really know. From the trailer, it looked really cool. It's got like a weird animatronic corpse. Five Nights at Freddy's. But who knows? Maybe it will actually be good. But you know it's not good? Little Hope. For many reasons that could have been done had they just executed the landing a little bit more. So. Oh, come on, Nintendo. Well, I had some Animal Crossing music play during this, but apparently not. How would you actually make a good ending for Little Hope? And not whatever the hell it tried to do instead. See if I can pull up the thing. Yeah, there we go.
Begging 18.
If you get scared easily by things, plug your ears and don't look because it's just mildly creepy.
You want to know what it means to be a killer? Think of the most profound thing you've ever done. The most beautiful thing you've ever created. And I promise you, it's nothing compared to watching life bleed out of someone. To see the fear in their eyes, to feel the quiet in your face. To hear you pleading, begging. That's true art. That's what you have to be, an artist. I've left my mind on the world. Have you?
It's what?
Have they said which serial killer it's based on?
H.H. Holmes. He is known as America's first serial killer, and he mainly did it in this one hotel that is now known as the Murder Castle. The premise of the game is that a bunch of like horror vloggers go and stay at a replica of the Murder Castle, and lo and behold, there's a natural murderer that is now putting them through what looks a lot like Jigsaw-inspired puzzles and traps and whatnot. And yeah, I don't know if that's supposed to be like the actual corpse of H.H. Holmes that has been dug up and now animatronicized. It's very interesting. I like the premise. I don't know if it's going to be any good, but they at least have a very good premise to work off of. In any case.
When did
But-
they announce this trailer?
Huh?
When did this trailer come out?
This came out, I think, last year. Yeah, October, like 2 days before Halloween of last year. Who knows? Maybe it actually will be good. Oh, here's some music I was trying to play. So yeah, any ideas on how to make like an actual good ending for Little Hope?
I mean, I've seen gameplay of it, so I know a bit more about the background. I remember like the man in the bar, like it turned out he was like the boyfriend of the main character's sister.
Yep,
Like that.
yep, and that's why he vaguely recognized you in the bar.
I feel like maybe I don't know, if they incorporated him more into like the reason why the main character is going crazy. Like I know the whole game is about mental illness and like trauma, PTSD, but I feel like that might have been a kind of interesting if like he played a bigger role rather than just he calls a cop on you for now, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that would be a good way, introducing one of the only non-illusionary main characters. Yeah. Any other ideas? Really, any answer is better than the answer that Little Hope actually gave.
I mean, I watched Everything Everywhere all at once. So maybe they could take that route of like multiple dimensions and stuff like that.
Yeah, like they're already going into the supernatural aspect, and they have like the multiple timeline sort of thing going on. That'd be pretty good. Yeah. And again, really anything is better than what they actually did. Jen, do you have any ideas before we wrap up? I couldn't really hear what other people were saying. Just as a recap, like, basically incorporating the guy that they meet in the bar a little bit more, since he actually was a character from the 1960s. He was like the boyfriend of like the sister that could die in two different ways. Another idea based on like the sort of premise that the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, kind of like multiple dimensions or timelines kind of thing going on. My idea is basically just have it be reincarnation, actual magic, and literally anything else other than as illness head and also mental illness makes you violent and evil and shoot people. Yeah. Spot on. Literally. Like, you have the whole thing about, like, it's about the witch trials. It makes sense that it would be like reincarnation, like a witch's curse about you, and that if you finally make your peace with the spirit of the witch, you finally be freed from the curse and stop reincarnating and dying in all these different ways. Yeah, I think that would be pretty satisfactory. So, I know it's a bit of a different vibe than what Jen's like very upbeat, and like positive workshop about Hades. This is an example of how not to be writing in games, or at least how to not do an ending for a game that actually had some legitimately good build-up. Maybe you got something out of it. Moral of the story: learn from the mistakes of AAA publishers, because they are a lot more expensive mistakes than anything that we'll do for right now. Yeah.
Did they ever explain why particularly it was the Salem witch trials that the main character was hallucinating about?
Because Little Hope it's like Little Hope, Oregon,
Oh.
and it's supposed to be like one of the sister cities of like Salem, Oregon, or Massachusetts, whatever. So it's supposed to be like right in the area, and like the professor. Oh yeah, there's only one professor. The dad is the professor, and the other three are students. The mom is like an older student. The professor is like a professor of like, what was he called? He was like an anthropologist. So he studied like cultures and was interested in like the Salem witch trials and stuff. So it was a field trip over to like the historical parts of Salem, and they were coming back, and that's what kickstarted everything else. So yeah.
I mean, this might be a whole different discussion, but it's like trying to attribute like the supernatural to like mental health issues, like can be few and far between, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
so,
yeah. Like
um,
I think we could definitely do like an entire workshop on like good and bad portrayals of mental health in video games. Because there's this game, there's also We Happy Few. Does anyone remember that game?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It had a lot of like really interesting themes about like censorship and like Big Brother-ish type things in like a weird like post-apocalyptic Britain.
And then
Um,
mental health drugs too.
And the whole thing was that like it kept like the way that the British government in this like weird neo-punk future kept everyone in check was these flavored pills called Joy, which basically just like kept erasing everyone's memories and causing like brain hemorrhages, but it made you really happy. Like it was like ecstasy. And that was supposed to be like attributed to like the censorship and ways that people like the police and the government keeps you silent. But when asked about this, the developers just said, "Oh no, it's supposed to be about antidepressants." It's like, what? So you're saying that antidepressants cause brain hemorrhage?
Like,
That's definitely not a good representation of mental health.
Yeah.
But then you have like some really good ones. You have like Celeste, you have Grease, you have
Oh, Celeste is about mental health?
yeah, it's basically about like overcoming your anxieties and like your depressive thoughts, and like the climbing a mountain is supposed to be symbolic of that sort of thing. Yes to which, Celeste or We Happy Few being bad, Jen, or both. Oh yes, just in general, when said it could be a workshop on it. So, idea for next year? Yes.
In terms of like good or bad examples on like mental health, I heard that Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice is a good example
yes.
of like mental health.
Hellblade is a very good depiction of, I believe it was PTSD and potentially schizophrenia,
Yeah.
I believe.
They're also incorporating like mythical creatures too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would also be a great one as like a good example of like how to accurately portray mental health in games without it seem like demonizing or like, you know.
Amori's also a good one.
Oh yeah, Amori too. Amori, depression, anxiety, PTSD from murdering your sister. Yeah. Jen, do you have anything off the top of your head that would be good for that workshop that we'll probably do next quarter or so? Off the top of my head, I have a lot of thoughts about this topic to ask. Alright, perhaps Jen will make a cameo next year for this mental health in video games workshop. Thank you for taking a photo so we can remember this. Taking a lot of photos, my dude. There you go. Oh, I thought you were taking a photo of this. You were just watching it. Okay.
I'm sorry, I was taking a picture of like Jen's messages because I didn't want to get up from my seat.
Oh. Well, at first I thought that's what you're doing, but I thought, is he just watching a video? Anyways, yeah, that's it for this workshop. Thanks y'all for coming, watching, etc. Get.
Huh?
If